Good afternoon and welcome to the Sam Lacrosse Show. Happy Monday. If there were a common cause for everything that goes wrong in a society, what would that common cause be? Some would say greed. The people too self-absorbed with financial gain to see beyond their paychecks tend to break things. Some would say lust, that the insatiable desire for money, power, and sex, among other things, can overwhelm the best of men to do the worst of things. Some, particularly Christians, would say pride, that thinking more of yourself, your ideas, and your capabilities than you otherwise would tends to get you in trouble more often than tends to keep you safe. All these answers hold weight, of course. I've fallen victim to all of them more times than I can count. I'm sure many of you are in the same boat as me. However, I still don't believe they're hitting the root of the issue, the core of what has led our culture down a rabbit hole of chaos. Every problem, as you've heard me say innumerable times at this point, is a values problem. When you see something wrong in the world, there is undoubtedly something wrong with the value system around or in that something. Obsessing over this concept for more than 6 years now, I've come to a conclusion about just how these value-induced problems occur. The trigger point for value-centered problems is simple: misalignment or misprioritization of values. You should value one thing higher than something else, but you invert it anyway. Instead of FaceTiming your wife on a business trip, you sleep with a college student at the front desk. Rather than face your financial troubles at your business by filing for bankruptcy, you embezzle funds to keep your own gravy train going. Rather than tell your child the hard truth about something they did wrong, you affirm them and set them up for greater failure down the road, one that will surely cost them more than the present one. Why does this happen? The better path is obvious to all, and yet almost no one takes it. But this makes no sense from a logical perspective. But from an emotional perspective, where all decisions are truly made, it can make all the sense in the world if that sense is powerful enough. All you have to do is find some justification, and you can make just about anything make sense to anyone. A highly emotional value with velocity behind it is far superior to one that is logical and stagnant. If left unchecked, it leads to all of the previous scenarios and many more. Distilled down to a single word, the reason why all things go wrong in a society, the root issue of all the other issues, is the following: idolatry. Idolatry, the elevation of an inferior value over a superior value, is the reason why our society has gone into a tailspin. We have simply made a conscious effort to exchange more important things for less important things. It's that simple. You exchange your loving wife and corresponding marriage for a fling with a 22-year-old with daddy issues. You deprive your partners of honesty and a chance to right the ship for a quick fix that will land all of you in prison. You tell your child what they want to hear instead of what they need to hear. All of these situations have one thing in common: idolatry, the exchange of a less valuable thing for a more valuable thing. The scariest thing about idols is that they can be made about just about anything. Your religious faith, your work, your spouse, your children, your ambitions, your laziness, your consumption habits, the very things you eat and drink. It is up to each person to be self-aware enough to diagnose where their idols tend to pop up and to deal with them properly, which is why, unfortunately, almost no one does deal with them. The first place we see idolatry occur is in Christianity. In the book of Exodus, the Israelites foolishly replaced the God who delivered them from Egypt with a golden calf, mocking God by dancing around it and engaging in orgiastic sex. It is only through the intercession of their spiritual leader Moses, the only one who didn't succumb to idolatry, that they are spared. This pattern repeats throughout the Bible through great heroes such as Joshua, Elijah, David, Samuel, and of course Jesus Christ. Christians also have the correct answers on how to respond to idolatry. That response must be decisive, swift, and vicious. The Bible says the following words on how faithful Christians dealt with idols: burn, destroy, rip, tear, and more. You cannot be nice with idolatry. You must crush it, and crush it fast. There is a reason for this. Idolatry, when left to its own devices, will multiply and spawn, swallowing everything truly valuable whole, snuffing it out for everyone. This also begs another question. What is the most likely idol for someone to have? Most would think that it is something they love, something they cling to for comfort in times of crisis, and this is an understandable guess. However, I see another side of it. Whenever you see someone grasp at something for quote-unquote comfort, it's really not. Comfort is not desperate. Comfort is easy. Instead, when someone reaches for something, when someone idolizes something, rather, it speaks to something else: fear. The most likely idol for any person is the thing that they fear the most. In my case, for example, I made idols out of food and pornography for most of my life due to an immense fear of lack and loneliness. Food and porn were my escapes, the only things that could make me feel better. I have had to kill those idols more times than I could have ever imagined, because that is what is required. It's like fighting a hydra. Cut off one head and two take its place. This is exactly why idolatry is a spiritual issue. It can't be totally killed. You must fight all the time. Extrapolated out to others, we can see this in nearly every other idol that exists. Drug addicts, for example, pawn their belongings for fentanyl out of fear of withdrawal. Young children cling to their parents for the first time they walk into kindergarten because they fear the unknown. Young women cling to social media and young men to video games because they fear being by themselves. It's not comfort they're seeking. It's the avoidance of pain. So given this, the biggest question must be asked. What is America's biggest idol? Where have we elevated something so high that it has displaced every other set of values that should be in its place? Where have we feared to tread? As with the issues of what is the greatest sin, there are a million ways we could go, and all of them would have a claim to the throne. But like with idolatry, there is still one that is America's ultimate idol, the one we fear more than any other. The thing Americans fear talking about, and therefore the thing Americans have idolized more than any other, particularly recently, is race. Race, as correctly pointed out by both dishonest and honest actors, is the cardinal sin of America's history. While we shouldn't cram it down the throats of preschoolers that they're bad people because of their skin color, for example, we should be educated on our history enough to understand that a grave evil was done to minorities in America, most especially black Americans. Even though it's not true, the greatest fear for America is for it to be deemed a racist country. It has always been this way, but especially now. In that same vein, the greatest fear of Americans is being called a racist. Americans, particularly conservative and dissenting liberal Americans, have lived in this fear for more than a decade. In our current culture, it has been race which has been weaponized as America's biggest fear to craft an idol of immense proportions by immense actors who want to use it to destroy this country. Race has been the ultimate boogeyman, the unbeatable trump card in any cultural conversation over the past decade. Inquiring into the demographics when it comes to violent crime, shut up, racist. Wanting to know why the single motherhood rate for black communities is so high, shut up, racist. Wanting to visit a historical monument, shut up, racist. This has led to a namesake pioneered by people such as Steve Deace and Jason Whitlock that has been the most forbidden subject to broach: racial idolatry. America, particularly recently, has turned skin color, not content of character, into an idol. This is not the only one, to be clear. We're going to be talking about those throughout the entire show. But race is, by far, America's biggest idol, one we must destroy if we're going to get anywhere constructive, no matter what skin color a person is. To do so, we must analyze some of the biggest hydra heads of racial idolatry and just how corrosive they've been to the cultural cohesion of American life. The greatest idol America has made out of race has been George Floyd. That fateful day when Derek Chauvin was filmed kneeling on George Floyd in May of 2020 changed the trajectory of America. Immediately upon release, cities went up in flames. Entire presidential campaigns were altered. People were thrown into digital or physical prison for dissenting beliefs about race. Derek Chauvin was thrown into prison on what most deem wrongful charges, although justice should certainly still have been served. Immediately after Floyd's death, the American left used him as a martyr and symbol of right-wing anti-white rage. The police were racist. They needed to be defunded. There were thousands of George Floyds per year. This was just the only one they'd gotten on tape. It was no longer enough to not be a racist. Now, you had to be an anti-racist. It was no longer about being diverse and inclusive in your hiring process. You now had to be quote-unquote equitable, a word that no one, still to this day, can clearly define or understand. Never mind that, even though he was elevated to saint-like status, Floyd himself was far from a saint. His criminal record and rap sheet were a mile long. He was a drug addict, had fentanyl in his bloodstream the day of his death. None of that mattered to the racial idolaters. All that mattered was that George Floyd was useful to them, the modern version of the golden calf. Never mind all the gripes that black America legitimately could take claim to, most of which were economic and familial in nature. Skin color was all that mattered. George Floyd looked a certain way, so they made him to be a certain thing. The damage from the inaugural racial idolatry elevation of George Floyd still lingers to this day. $2 billion in property damage was done in the immediate aftermath during the quote-unquote Summer of Love. Active duty police effectively entered a war zone against the very citizens they were designated to protect, with police recruitment falling to all-time lows across the country, particularly in urban areas where police presence was most needed. Anti-white racism reached a fever pitch, particularly when it came to corporate HR departments and higher education admissions, notwithstanding social media posts and companies, which allowed all of that venom to be spewed, as long as it wasn't at them. But the greatest damage that the George Floyd incident caused was cultural. Americans, to the contrary of much of the narrative that was spun after his death, have been trying to move away from a race-focused society. Americans are good people. The vast majority of us don't care a single bit about what color you are. We want people to do well and to succeed. It's why the American dream is called such, and it's why so many people want to move here. But as soon as the George Floyd incident took place and Black Lives Matter capitalized, that all changed. In the words of Friedrich Nietzsche, we had ripped open a long-closed wound and had the audacity to ask ourselves why it hurt to do so. Americans, particularly white Americans, began to live in fear of being called a bigot, a racist, or some sort of phobe. Slowly but surely, this extended to all other ethnic minorities, religions, sexual orientations, and political parties. The woke reign of terror was at the peak of its power. Anyone's head could be in the guillotine if they said the wrong thing. The second greatest American idol America has made out of race is Karmelo Anthony, and no, not the basketball player. Karmelo Anthony is a 17-year-old native of Frisco, Texas, who is currently undergoing a trial for the murder of Austin Metcalf. Metcalf, the MVP linebacker of his school's football team with a 3.97 GPA, as well as being a professing Christian, was stabbed to death by Anthony earlier this year about getting into a verbal altercation at a track meet. When Metcalf held his ground, Anthony pulled out a knife and stabbed Metcalf in the heart in front of his twin brother. Metcalf collapsed, and after several people attempted to help at the scene, died minutes after arriving to a local area hospital. Anthony, to his credit, surrendered to the police shortly afterwards, where he broke down sobbing, saying that Metcalf had quote-unquote put his hands on him and disrespected him. Due to Texas law, Anthony was charged and prosecuted as an adult for murder and was placed under house arrest. After the Metcalf killing, the unbelievable happened. The social justice warriors went after the victim, not after Karmelo Anthony. Both of Metcalf's parents were swatted numerous times, with his father at one point having guns drawn on him upon his opening the door. He, along with Anthony's dad, was forced to leave his job. Upon having a press conference advocating on behalf of his son, Anthony's father successfully booted him off the property, saying that it was quote-unquote disrespectful to his son, who had murdered his child. But the most stunning part by far was the public outreach and outcry. In early May, Anthony's Give, Send, Go fundraiser to pay his legal defense had collected over $500,000. Anthony is, like all people, innocent until proven guilty, obviously. But unlike the other incidents where the scenario has popped off, there is hardly any dispute as to what actually went down. It's cut and dry. However, to our racial idolaters, that mattered very little. On both sides of the aisle, mind you. After Metcalf's death, a group called quote-unquote Protect White Americans held a protest at Metcalf's high school football stadium. Just as if the group were called quote-unquote Protect Black Americans, this did nothing but further enhance racial idolatry, just as the Ku Klux Klan or any other white nationalist or supremacist organization would. Metcalf's father, to his great credit, disavowed the effort. Finally, the straw that I believe will break the back of racial idolatry will be the victims of the Cincinnati riots we've seen throughout the past month. In a story that has since swept the nation unlike many others I've ever seen, the aftermath of the Cincinnati brawl, which left several white victims severely hospitalized, including women, are showing just how deep the racial idolatry movement has sunk. Details are still being parsed out as to how the brawl started, but the fact remains the same. Unprovoked physical violence is bad. Unprovoked physical violence towards women is worse. The videos, if you haven't seen them, are horrifying. People getting stomped on, kicked, punched, heads slamming onto concrete, and most horrifyingly of all, no one stepping in to stop the madness, to stop these horrifying acts from happening. Most shamefully, from the mostly male crowd that surrounded the assault. A reasonable question to ask would be the following. Why? Why did no one step in, particularly the men? Well, maybe, just maybe, it's because they didn't want to end up as another Derek Chauvin or Austin Metcalf. No one wants to say the quiet part out loud about just what the reaction from our chattering class would have been if the races on these victims would have been inverted. Cincinnati would have been on fire. Our elites from business, media, and politics would have used this as a prop nonstop to pander to the racial idolatry crowd. But when it's white people, it's an entirely different story. This is a problem, not just because it involves white people or because I am a white person. I don't care about my skin color, and I don't care about yours. I care about the elevation of skin color as America's ultimate value, because it's not America's ultimate value. America's values of excellence, justice, the pursuit of happiness are all far superior to things we can't control, such as the color of our skin. We've sadly forgotten this recently. Idolatry, as it does with anything, corrodes all that it touches. Particularly with a subject as sensitive to Americans as race, values need to reign supreme in the conversation. Every person, no matter what they look like, is deserving of, at minimum, equal rights under the law, and if you're a Christian, the status of a child and image bearer of God, which everyone is, and what they are. Racial idolatry discards this. Values aren't used to elevate, but to denigrate. Many have succumbed to racial idolatry as an act of compassion, particularly young people. This is easy enough to understand. Young people are the most open to compassion, and they're the most naive to these being very ancient and deep concepts. But idolatry of any kind, racial or not, is the least compassionate thing you can embody. It is the opposite, total degradation and humiliation. It takes all nuance, all opportunities to rise out of the equation, and forces a caricatured and demonic narrative onto people who may or may not fit that description. It's disgusting, and it's wrong. Idolatry is dangerous because it blinds us to the truth. Idolatry convinces people that nothing they do and nothing that they value matters. It's all just baked into the cake, completely unable to change. Nothing could be further from the truth. When you put something on a pedestal, you open it up to judgment, just like we do with anything else. If the thing that you elevate cannot be questioned, it's not a value. It is an idol. The truth is the thing we most need to combat idolatry. If we cannot have a truthful conversation about values and whether they're steering us in a positive or negative direction, we should not have a conversation at all. If we do not tear down the idols in our own lives, we can expect that those idols will begin to consume us, our families, our communities, and our country. It's not a matter of if it will happen, but when it will happen. Boy, oh boy. First and foremost, guys, I am so sick today. Very, very sick. I'm so sorry about that. So today is going to be scratchy voice Sam for the win, as it turns out. So we're gonna make do with what we have. But appreciate you bearing with me. Okay, so idolatry destroys societies because it elevates the wrong thing. We're operating under the presupposition that idolatry is the way it is, and idolatry is the problem that it is, because we're putting something in the highest place. So for example, let's take the Exodus example we talked about earlier on. So for the Israelites, God was their highest value, the thing that they valued the most. And so when they replaced God with the golden calf, their society went to hell, sexual degeneracy all over the place, all that kind of thing. So I heard this great quote from Tim Dillon, I believe earlier this week or last week on his podcast. And I thought it was so interesting. I never heard it phrased this way. He said, "You end up where you belong." And I thought that was really fascinating because he's right. You end up where you belong because there's nothing more impactful to you, to anybody else, than the decisions that you end up making. So where you belong depends on what you elevate to your top values, because you make decisions, you make your lifestyle, everything else because of the value system that you adopt. So essentially, if you elevate the wrong things, you'll make decisions based off those wrong things, which will make your life careen off to the side of your life, and it will not end up being good. And so everything is a values equation. Everything is a values problem. Every issue is a values issue, no matter whether it's idolatry or race or Israel or whatever. It is all about the prioritization of your value system, or if you prioritize your values at all, which you should. Obviously, that's what this program exists for. And so the problem is, with idolatry especially, when something that should not be in your value system, when something that is, an inferior value acting like a superior value, it begins to consume the rest of your value system. And so when you see something that you value, something that you hold in high esteem, again, whether it's your wife, your kids, your job, your sex life, whatever it turns out to be, if it consumes the rest of your value system, and if it consumes your life, it is not a value. It is an idol. And you need to work on killing that idol immediately, and probably a lot quicker than you otherwise would. Because you need to take a look at these things that start to really consume your life. This is how addiction happens, by the way. Addiction starts out as, I'm going to take a bong hit, I'm going to, down this whole bottle of whiskey, I'm going to whatever the thing is going to be. And eventually, years down the line, you spent tons of money on it, tons of time on it, you've wrecked your life because of it, and it's consumed all of your values. Your values don't matter because that's the only thing that is inside of your value system that has any weight. So it's not become a value, it's gone from a value, maybe in some scenarios, to an idol in that scenario. And so we need to be very, very careful when it comes to our own value systems and our own idols, just because, again, they're just so tricky to have and to deal with. And so you need to take a look at your value system constantly. This is why observing your values is it's so critical. It's absolutely critical, because if there's an idol there, you need to tear it down. Again, you cannot be nice when it comes to idols. You can't be nice when it comes to idolatry. You need to tear it down, and you need to have no mercy with going forward in terms of how you deal with that idol, because when an idol is present inside of your value system, it denigrates and destroys the rest of your value system. You can't have that happen. And so at a societal level, great societies get to become great societies because of the values they hold. That's how great societies work. So great societies are not built because of, this is where Nazism went wrong, for example. They're not built because of a master race. No one is a master race. We're all equal in the eyes of God. They're not a certain way because of their demographics or their economic system. A country is great because of the values that they hold in the highest place. So this is why Douglas Murray had this interesting point on Joe Rogan once, where he's like, there's a reason why people would prefer to live in some place like America versus some place like Mogadishu. And I have nothing against Mogadishu. I'm sure there's a lot of lovely people there. But the reason why Mogadishu is where Mogadishu is, and the reason why America is where America is, you can take this with any place. You can do this with, Burma, China, pick Antarctica, pick your place of choice. So if the values of that place do not elevate the best of people, the best of societies, then you can't have a great country. You just can't. You can have all the resources in the world, but you're not going to have a great country. You're not going to have a great city. You're not going to have a great community. You're not going to have a great marriage. Doesn't matter how hot your wife is. Sorry. Doesn't matter how hot you are. Sorry. What matters in the marriage is what is valued in the marriage. If you have good values in the marriage will be good. If you have bad values in the marriage will be bad. Plain and simple. Companies, countries, organizations, communities, friend groups, everything works that way. Everything works that way. So when those go away, when values go away, when values are out of the equation, they lose grip on that. Countries, whatever, especially true with societies. So when societies lose sight as to what made them great in the first place, they begin to slide into decadence, they begin to decay, because they lose their identity and who they are. And we're seeing this happen in real time, by the way. It's fascinating. Going back to Douglas Murray, and I've had my critiques of Douglas Murray, obviously. But Douglas Murray wrote a great book, I believe in 2017. I'll say 2017. I might be wrong about that. Called The Strange Death of Europe, about the massive Islamic migration into Europe because of the terror wars, because we blew up the Middle East and those people didn't have anywhere to go, so they flooded into Europe. Europe opened their borders and said, hey, we'll take all of you, come into Italy, come into Germany, come into London, come into France, come into wherever. And that country has lost its identity because they have capitulated so much to another culture that they have forgot what made their own culture good in the first place. Europe apparently used to be a very, very great place to visit. I don't like going to Europe. And I've been privileged to go over to Europe twice. I don't like it. I don't see what the big deal is. Why? Because Europe is not Europe, at least from what it was described to me. It's not anymore. It's kind of a lackluster. It's very sad when you go over there. Actually, it's kind of very lackluster, and the people are kind of have this dejected spirit about them, and it's just not. It's very bizarre. It's very strange. And I'm an American first and foremost. I'm a patriot. I love this country, but there's just a sense of malaise over Europe right now, and that's clearly because they've lost their values, and therefore their values have allowed their culture to descend into lesser values. And I'm not saying that Islamic values are lesser values, even though I'm a Christian and I believe that from a theological perspective. But Europe had an identity, and now Europe doesn't have an identity, which is causing a lot of problems, not only with immigration, with economics, with social issues, with housing, whatever you want to pick your poison, government, all that stuff. And so this is very much starting to happen in America too, especially in the last 10 years, like I said, in terms of just the attacks on people like the founders, on the founding documents, on what year the country was founded. It's like it's wild to me that this kind of cultural erasure, I mean, you talk about cultural appropriation. I mean, cultural appropriation in America has been happening really for a very long time at this point. Only it's not in the way that people think, because people are appropriating their version of America onto America. Tucker Carlson said this once, and it really affected me in a very profound way. He said, if you truly love something, you do not seek to change it in a fundamental value. And that's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. And so I said, okay, then what is the motive of the people that want to burn America down from its current standing? And the motivation is because they hate America. The people that want to fundamentally change America, fundamentally change Europe, fundamentally change China for that matter, or whoever else, they don't like the current state, they hate the current state, and they want to change it. That's why that stuff happens. And so all of this to say, taking it from more of a macro level, focusing on idolatry purely. So the biggest thing that idolatry does is alienate people from the truth. And so you look at all of the extensions of basically, Louise Perry had a phenomenal, I think a phenomenal example of this with her book, The Case Against Sexual Revolution, where all of her chapter titles were essentially a anti-truth about sex, love, relationships, marriage, whatever, versus the truth of marriage. One of those, for example, is that lust is not love. Lust is an idol, love is a value. So, same thing, apply that to everything else. Lust is not love, addiction is not enjoyment, etc. And so, when you idolize lust, you cannot love. When you idolize addiction, you can't enjoy things. And pick your poison with anything, with any idol that you might have in your own life. And we all have one, at least one. And I have multiple, because I'm a bad sinner. I'm not a good person, so I have multiple idols. So the truth is that people who are obsessed with their idols, the people who are addicts, the people who are falling into lustful behavior, etc., they are obsessed with their idols, addicted to their idols, because so many of them were seeking a true thing, which is a good thing. They were seeking love, enjoyment, etc. But then they made the mistake of getting myopic and making it the only thing. So my identity is defined by my sexual taste, by my politics, by my love of food, my lust of food, etc. So what that does is when you focus and you get really myopic on one of your values that you therefore make an idol, it elevates it to the top of your value system and basically inverts the whole thing from top to bottom. And really, at the end of the day, that's how all societies decay. That's how you get dictators. That's how you get authoritarianism, communism, fascism, all of them. Because you blow up your value system. You blow up your value system and you idolize something and you put an idol inside of your value system's place. And so when values are out of order, when you move your values out of order, it leaves an opening for people to exploit them, to take advantage of them, which is how movements get oriented and converted from value-oriented ones to non-value-oriented ones. It becomes a social movement, whatever it's going to be, and it turns into a cult. That's exactly how it happens. So this is why Germany was once, in Weimar Germany, before the Republic before the kingdom fell apart, before all that kind of stuff really, turned on its head. Germany was known for great art, innovation, science, democracy. And then as soon as Hitler came in and changed everything and idolized, white people and the Aryan race and made that the focal point of his political ideology, that's why Germany fell apart. And the same is true with Soviet Russia. The same is true with, like you see people who idolize dictators and leaders. Once that dictator and leader, or whoever else it's going to be, once they fall away, once that cult of personality goes away, because no one lives forever, the movement stops and it decays into a mess. And I think that with idolatry, it's the exact same way. I know with idolatry, it's the exact same way, except from a person perspective, it's a value perspective. And so, something to keep in mind. And your values are sacred. And when idols are there, your values are not. So, prioritize your values. Don't allow an idol to creep into everything. Okay, actually doing okay. I don't know if my voice is going. I guess I'll see on the recap. But, okay. And I think the biggest example of this trend that I was just discussing with, social movements and things like that, and how idolatry can destroy a movement, is with the pride movement. It's gay pride. So gay pride, what it was once called, which has devolved into Pride Month, so a whole month devoted to supposedly sexual orientation acceptance, whatever you want to call it, is currently, I believe, in the process of self-destructing because of its idolatry. Not because of equal rights, which it was founded on, which is a civil rights issue, but of sexual openness and perversion, which goes all the way down to children. And so gay pride, Dave Chappelle has this now iconic joke about this in his special Sticks and Stones, where he talks about a car and, the L and the B and the G and the T are all kind of riding in the car, and they're all confused why each letter is in there. And what started out as just like, hey, we don't want gay, because this is how it started basically, because, gay people were put on like FBI watch lists and they were getting like hunted down, their phones were getting tapped and stuff. And people were like, hey, I don't want to get like beat up by the police. I don't want the FBI tracking my phone records. And it's like, okay, of course. No one wants that. And no one should be targeted, especially because of their sexual orientation, their political beliefs, etc. Like, that's wrong, especially by the government, by an intel agency, by the biggest law enforcement organization at the federal level in the world. So when you look at the seeds of the gay pride movement, and I'm a Christian, I don't believe in gay pride. I don't believe in pride at all. But when I look at it from a civil rights perspective, I'm like, okay, it makes sense. But now it has gone off the rails and it has become not only gay pride month, which encapsulates like every type of, again, sexual openness, perversion, and it's now spreading into children. And we've seen this recently, and this is where we've seen this hit all on all angles, from transgenderism and the madness surrounding the gender cult. And really, I think the thing that really was the watershed moment about how, okay, Pride Month isn't about gay people anymore, because it's not. Pride Month isn't about gay people. Pride Month is about degeneracy. Like the Pride movement now is a very cultish, weird, groomer, kid-focused, it's just wild how much it's morphed. And this is the result of, again, a lack of losing sight on the values that initially gay pride was founded on. And now it's been taken over by ideologues and people who are basically in a cult at this point. And so when people like Matt Walsh, when people like Abigail Schreier, when people like Allie Beth Stuckey, whoever else, they essentially say that, okay, stay away from our kids. Like, don't put a drag queen in my kid's library, please. Like, don't talk to my 5-year-old about gender pronouns and tell them that they're not a boy when they're a girl or whatever. And now it's descended into complete anarchy. Like you see a pride parade or whatever, and it's very strange. You got people like literally having sex in the street in some cases. You got blatant nudity in front of children. What it's doing is that it's unfortunate for people who are actually gay, whatever. It's making a caricature of gay people. And it's really showing the pride movement as it currently is for what it is. It's just kind of an ugly mess with really no values attached to it. It's just because that's not, when you look at like a pride parade now, it's like, no one is like, it's gross. It's not, and it's not because it's gay people, by the way. I'm probably going to get attacked by saying this, but it's like, I don't want to see anybody having sex in the street. I don't want to see anybody naked. I don't want to see like anyone get turned into a caricature. I don't want, kids to be walking down the street and seeing that stuff. Like get it out of my face. Get it out of the kids' faces. Stop it. And it just it's devolved into this kind of just very bizarre, strange, like just cult of like weirdness. Like, I'm sorry, that's just what it is. And I think how you can prove this, by the way, is the most mind-blowing thing about all of this, about how the gay pride movement has really fallen from grace recently, is that the most offended people and the most radical activists mostly are all straight people. You see a couple loud gay folks, trans folks, whatever at the top, but this is so fast. I live in Austin, Texas. There's massive pride celebrations every single year in terms of, when we have Pride Month, there's a bunch of parades and various things, and people are allowed, that's social demonstrations. It's, protected by the Constitution. That's fine. But I don't know a single gay person that has gone to a pride parade in Austin, Texas. I know dozens of straight people that have. And so this is so fascinating to me because, again, it's like rules for me, not for thee sort of thing. Like, I'm going to do this on behalf, quote unquote, of another movement, but I'm actually not going to do it on behalf of the other movement, et cetera, et cetera. And so you have all of these, again, these straight people that are like grifting onto pride, to gay pride. And it's just really, it's to do exactly what I mentioned earlier. It's just to be a degenerate. Like, they want to have sex in public. Like, they get off on that. They dance naked in the street. Like, it's, they are like, screaming about various things. It's so weird. It's just so bizarre. It's literally the golden calf story all over again. It's so emblematic of idolatry. It's literally the golden calf story all over again. It's just kind of people having weird, wild, orgiastic sex about something that is devoid of value and this and whatever. And it's just so, it's so strange, man. It's really, really strange. And so Pride Month, particularly for straight people, has become nothing more than really a status marker. That's what it is for a lot of people. It's just a mark of your status. I am going to advocate on behalf of gay people, and I'm going to say, like, and I'm going to, again, dance naked in the street, and I'm going to, like, shake myself in front of a camera, whatever, like, take my boobs out, whatever, take my dick out, whatever. Sorry, don't want to curse, but anyway. So it's just been, it's a symbol. It's like a Green Lantern with a thing. He just pops the shield out in front of people, the force field. And it's a symbol to get themselves out of harm's way from the idolatry mafia. That's exactly what this is. It's a mafia. It's a cult. It's not about advocating, particularly for straight people, it's not about advocating for gay people. It's not about pride. It's about you. It's about you. Your narcissism. How you can be the center of attention. Look at me, Dad. Look at me, Mom. Aren't you proud? It's very strange. It's about you. It's not about advocating for gay people or equal rights, especially for straight people. It's just not. It's about getting yourself out there. Look at me. That's what all narcissism is. It's just look at me syndrome. And how you can showcase both in a way that makes you look the best or the most virtuous or whatever. It's nothing more than like a pharisaical self-righteousness about yourself. Like and any expression of narcissism, it's just gross. It's disgusting. It's wrong. And it's not okay. It's just not. Again, it's not about slamming gay people. That's not what this is. It's about a valueless movement that has hijacked a once noble movement in many people's eyes for gay people and saying that, hey, I'm a straight person, but I don't have social status, so I'm going to go to a pride parade and get naked and shake myself in the street. Look at me. It's gross, man. I won't stop saying it. It's just gross because all expressions of narcissism are gross. All expressions of narcissism are gross. And if you don't believe that, just look at where it gets you. It doesn't get you anywhere good. I'll tell you that for sure. It doesn't get you anywhere good. And there's countless examples to prove that, which is why this episode is being done, to show you that. So let me hit my own side in terms of an idol that is being torn down. How about Donald Trump? How about MAGA? So I want to say I've hit a lot of the left-wing things. I've hit the race issue. I've hit the gay pride issue. I've hit a lot of those things. And there's a reason for that. But idolatry is not a left-wing thing. It's not. And I think there's a lot of people on the right that have gotten very self-righteous about this, in the conservative wing, quote-unquote, that have gotten really self-righteous about this. Although I do believe that the left has taken this to some degree to the worst excesses, to their great detriment. And the American right is currently in the process of their own implosion with Donald Trump and the MAGA movement. They're imploding. As someone who is a big supporter of both, by the way, they're done. They're cooked. Donald Trump's cooked. MAGA's cooked. Everything's cooked. And so we've been seeing these kind of like fissures and these cracks ever since the election. And now I would say it's safe to say that it's full-blown panic mode from multiple fronts. For Donald Trump, for the MAGA movement, I think this thing is about like this much away from totally breaking and blowing up in front of our faces. And I'm not catastrophizing. I really don't think that I am. I think that I'm being actually very fair when it comes to all that stuff. And so let's get into it then. So this is a two-sided coin, I believe. This is my analysis from it. I take no pleasure in saying this, by the way. But one side of that coin is Trump himself, and the other side of the coin is Trump's base. So you have two idols that people are really foisting up in terms of swapping them out for the MAGA values, which are good values. That's why Trump won a majority of the electorate this time around. They're good values. That's why people voted for him. So Trump has become an idol of himself by thinking pridefully that he can do anything he wants and become unaccountable to his base. That is exactly the trap that Trump has fallen into. And I think, there's countless examples of this. Trump has, in his own mind, become untouchable to his base. Oh, they'll forgive me for everything that I do. Like, I can just do whatever and they'll be okay with it. They'll get over it, whatever it's going to be. That's not how politics works. Even with someone like Donald Trump, who's the most powerful politician of my lifetime, more sway over most people than anybody in my lifetime, by far. It doesn't work that way. Politics means being accountable to your voters, the people that put you in the position of power. When you lose that, you lose your power. And so Trump has, especially during this second administration where he had to take 4 years off because people, because of, Joe Biden winning and everything like that, he basically said like, hey, I beat the odds. And he did. I beat death. He did. I did all these things. He did. But he's gotten an even more inflated ego from that perspective, even though I would say his other parts of his ego have taken a back seat. But in terms of his stance among his base, by saying like, hey, I can just go back on all the promises that I said and no one's going to really care, that's not going to fly. And it's not flying. And that's a really big problem. We're going to be talking about that more, but that's really where Trump has gone wrong. And so the other side, the second part of this, is that his base, the MAGA movement, has fallen for that idolatry trap by elevating Trump no matter what. Trump can do no wrong. I am supportive of the president no matter what he does, no matter what he says, no matter how many times he has not kept a promise to us, whatever. Because this second term, he has not done so. He has not done so on multiple fronts. And I'm personally very upset about that. I'm very upset about that. So not only do they elevate and defend Trump no matter what, the MAGA people, and I'm a MAGA person, so I can speak on this, they affirm him in whatever he does. So even if Trump betrays his base, which he's done multiple times, I would argue throughout this entire administration, they say, hey, no big deal, whatever, it's fine, don't worry about it, which leads to Trump thinking and fueling his own idolatry, thinking that he is untouchable. And so I think this is leading to people are slowly coming to terms with, on both sides of the coin, on the Trump side and on the MAGA side, that this administration is largely becoming a failure. Again, they're cooked. Trump is cooked. This administration is done. You give it another runway of a year up until they get to the midterms, and I think they're going to lose the midterms because that's what happens in most administrations, but I think they're going to lose the midterms this time as well. So they have about a year left of power, and they're not getting anywhere. And I take no pleasure in saying this, by the way. Like, I want that agenda to succeed. In many ways they have, but in a lot of ways they haven't, and we should be honest about that. But I believe that when all is said and done, that this will be one of the biggest disappointments, the failure of the Trump administration for value-oriented people out there, because we've run into the same idolatry problem that has always existed, political idolatry, Trump idolatry. And I mean, the Epstein files are an example of this. Like, day one, Epstein files released. Where are they? What are you hiding? Who are you covering for? Who's on your payroll? What is this? The tech right is an example of this. Why in the world does Peter Thiel and Palantir get a blank check to basically put all of us in a database? Why is that a thing? It shouldn't be. I didn't vote for that. I didn't vote for all these tech people coming in, like Mark Andreessen. Like, did anyone really think that Mark Andreessen was MAGA? That Peter Thiel was MAGA? That Elon Musk was MAGA? They're not. They're grifters. They're shills. They're technocrats. They're not. So, it just comes down to this. I mean, the Trump administration, they're not delivering on the promises that they said. They're just not. And it serves us right, by the way, for buying into it. It serves us right for buying into this and thinking that, okay, hey, they're going to do right by us no matter what. It's going to be fine. We don't have to do anything about it, whatever. So the issue with this, however, the issue with the right, with the conservative movement, MAGA movement, America First movement, whatever you want to call it, is that if this happens, if the Trump administration does implode, which it could not, but I think it's in the process of doing so right now, which is unfortunate, they will have no future. I was just listening to a podcast this morning with Megyn Kelly and Marjorie Taylor Greene. And their answer, they're both two pretty smart women, I think. I like both of them. And so they basically asked each other kind of like, hey, what's going to happen after Trump leaves? And they're like, I don't know. And I don't know either. I don't think anybody knows. I don't think Trump knows. I don't think anybody in his administration knows. So basically, the left, which is completely valueless and full of idolatry, as mentioned, they're at least propping up new idols. They're putting up Zoran Mamdani. They're putting up, Luigi Mangione. They're putting up all these, Jasmine Crockett, all these people. And are those people serious? And are those people destructive and hateful and a bunch of things? Of course they are. They're ridiculous. And so the Trump movement, the MAGA movement, they've already destroyed the old idols of neoconservatism and the establishment GOP, which thank God for that, because they needed to be destroyed. They needed to be torn down. But what's really scary, in my view, is what happens if we don't reverse course, if we don't go back to where we came from and get the MAGA agenda actually accomplished, which I've seen no signs of us doing. I just don't have much hope for that. And again, I take no pleasure in saying that at all. I take no pleasure in saying that. But I think it's going to end up being a failure, and I think it's going to be a faceplant. And am I glad that, still that, Kamala Harris is not the president? Like, you bet I am. I'm very glad about that. But in terms of just the overall stance of what that administration was going to mean for a lot of people, it's a failure, I think. And we should be honest in calling it out as such. Okay, so last bit I want to get in here. I'll spare you guys my scratchy voice, and I will go and spend that to all my calls later on today. But I will avoid it with you guys. So, idolatry, we've already covered, can only exist in a delusion. It can only exist in delusion. So the moment you break out of that delusion, the moment it loses its power over you. So when you lie to yourself, when you kind of construct this world that an idol can take the place of your values, you devoid yourself, or you remove the truth from your orbit. Because idolatry is anti-truth at its core. So the moment you break out of that delusion, the moment that idol, whatever it is for you, loses its power over you. So the great thing about idols is that they're not real. They're not real. They're a projection. That's why they have to stick out so much. And so it's just like anything any human says or does. If it has to say it's more powerful than it is, if it has to take up more space than it does, it probably isn't, which is a good thing, which means you can fight against it. So idols, in that way, are basically just a microcosm of what the broader culture says about something. And as value-oriented people, we need to recognize that. And we need to have a just honest conversation about what is going to happen about idols. And so if you live in the delusion, you will not be able to see the truth about your idols. But if you don't, then you'll be able to see the truth fair and square and right out of the gate. So the way you beat idolatry, you have three things. First thing, you need to tell the truth. The only way that idolatry can thrive is through lies, of thinking that something is more important than your ultimate value system, which it isn't. So the best way to spot an idol is if you can't tell the truth about it. If you find yourself defending it, lying against it, validating it in some way, it's an idol. And you need to tear it down, you need to get rid of it. So if you think that thing, whatever it is for you, again, whatever it is for you, is something more important than your ultimate value system, which it isn't, it's an idol and you need to get rid of it. And when you tell the truth, when you go the opposite of idolatry, idols make themselves very apparent if you pay attention. So you know what you need to stop doing? You need to stop doing what's harming you. I need to stop drinking. I need to stop watching pornography. I need to stop cheating on my spouse. I need to stop working so many hours. I need to spend more time with my children. I need to, get off of social media, whatever the thing is. You know what you need to stop doing and what's harming you, so you can fight against it, make it into something that's very clear to you in your life. And so the truth, clarity, getting out of your own way in that regard is critical to getting these things across the line. So you need to be able to fight. You can't fight what you can't know. You can't hit what you can't see. You need to make the truth the focus. Second thing, when you kill all the idols in your life, it's not enough to identify them. It's not enough to identify idols. So you can say, hey, I'm addicted to porn. Okay, that's great. Hey, I'm addicted to alcohol. I'm addicted to food, whatever. I spend too much time at work. I'm a workaholic. Okay, great. That's good. But then you need to kill that idol. And not just get rid of it, you need to kill it. Go after it, hunt it, kill it, destroy it. And, for my Christians out there, the Bible is very clear about this. You cannot get around and get over idolatry by just acknowledging it. You need to wage war against it. You need to hate your flesh. My friend Hunter Sprague says this all the time. You need to hate your flesh. I love that. You need to hate your desires that are unaligned with your values. You need to wage war against those things. And this is going to look different from various angles or lenses. Like some people might need therapy. Some people might just need willpower. Some people might need accountability, friends, apps, blockers, whatever, clearing out your liquor cabinet, whatever it's going to be. But you must destroy all of them viciously and violently, or they will find a way back into your life. The Bible says flee from sexual morality, for example. Flee from it. Get it out of your life. There was a time where I was recovering from my pornography addiction that I took all the search engines off my phone. I couldn't have Google Maps on my phone. Because of that reason, I knew that my idol was going to come back in if I didn't take drastic measures to avoid it. So whether that's dumping your liquor in the sink, whether that's throwing out your cigarettes, whether that's, again, cutting off your drug dealer, moving to another city, whatever it's going to be, you need to kill that idol. And you need to kill it fast. Because if you do not kill it, it's going to find its way back to you, and that's going to make everything worse. Third thing, the final issue of this with idols, is you need to replace them. It's not enough to just break things, okay? You need to replace things. So the best thing to replace idols with is values, which are anti-idolatry by definition. So values are both the start and the end of the idolatry problem. Values get put into place, idols corrupt them, idols get torn down, we get back to values again. That's the cycle that repeats itself over and over again. So if we do not round out that circle with values, idols are going to have more room to come in. The Hydra head's going to keep popping up. And so values exist in harmony together versus apart, which is the exact opposite of how idols work. Idols are only able to work in isolation. Values work in harmony together. So the best thing to acknowledge with your value system is have a system, not just one value, because that's an idol. When a value begins to dominate your value pie chart, what I like to call it, it's an idol. It's not anything that's constructive. It's not a value. So when you get back to the things that bring you value, you can find it far easier to move forward, because idols keep you stuck. Idols keep you isolated, and values don't. Thank you all for watching, bearing with my voice. Own the day, open your mind. I'll see you guys next week.